They say, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. I used to believe that, until the new CEO walked in, fired me in under 3 minutes, and told me I didn't belong in any room at all. My name's Marcus Leary. I'm 44. Or, as Riley Strand put it, an analog holdover in a digital ecosystem. I was the executive vice president of strategic partnerships at Virion, a tech-adjacent marketing firm that built its empire, not on hype, but on backbone, long-term B2B revenue pipelines. My team. We were responsible for over 71% of the company's total revenue stream last fiscal year. But apparently, that's not enough when your LinkedIn summary doesn't include the words creator economy. Riley didn't even look up when she slid the papers across the desk. You're operating in a world that doesn't exist anymore, she said, tapping her stylus against a tablet. We need someone who understands attention spans and signal boosts. Then she glanced at me, like I was a fax machine someone left plugged in too long. I stared at the papers, not because I didn't know what they were. I'd seen enough corporate bloodletting to recognize the layout, but because I couldn't believe this was happening. Not after 15 years. Not after mentoring half the division heads in the building. I looked at her once, just once, then reached out, shook her hand, smiled, and walked out without saying a word. Control is currency. I wasn't going to give her mine. I packed my office in silence. No tears, no slamming drawers, just methodical removal. Framed awards, cleared. USB with archived pitch decks pocketed. Photos of the team at conferences and trade shows, neatly wrapped in a sweater. 15 years of loyalty boxed in 30 minutes. Then I found it, folded behind a dusty stack of quarterly reports. A handwritten note on torn notebook paper. I unfolded it and sat down. Marcus, you don't remember this, but you changed my life in a hallway 10 years ago. You told me my pitch was half-baked but hungry, and you gave me a shot. No one else even saw me. Now I run my own firm. Every time I close a deal, I remember what you said. Show up sharp, stay humble, own the room. Lena. I smiled. Not the bitter kind, the kind that lands low in your chest and burns steady. As I walked out, a few of my team were waiting near the elevators. They already knew. Word travels fast when you're the one who built the network. Sarah, one of my senior strategists, gave me a look, half heartbreak, half fury. She said we need someone who understands signal boosts, I told them, deadpan. Laughter rippled through the group, short and sharp. That was my gift, finding levity in the wreckage. Always had been. We went to Ridley's bar across the street, same place we'd toasted our first Fortune 500 client. Now it was a farewell wake, drinks clinking over low curses and muttered disbelief. She really canned you like that? Matt asked, shaking his head. After what you did with the Vega rollout? Apparently, client retention is non-scaling energy, I said. That's what she called it. Someone ordered another round. I paid for it without blinking. Final tab, final act. And as the drinks circled, I stood up and looked at them. The crew who'd stayed late, who'd believed, who'd built something real under me. Listen, I said, voice low but steady. I'm not mad. I'm not even surprised. This was coming the second the board wanted flashover function. But let me be clear. I'm not done. Not even close. Sarah raised her glass. To Marcus, she said, the only man in this company who could make quarterly metrics sound like a damn TED Talk. They all drank to that, and so did I. Later that night, I walked past Virion's tower one last time. 15 years, just another silhouette against a glass skyline now. I didn't hate them. Hate takes energy, and I'd need every ounce of mine soon. See? Riley thought she understood the signal. But the truth is, you can flood a room with noise and still not be heard. She didn't fire a dinosaur. She poked a strategist. And the thing about strategists? We never play our last move first. The note had stayed in my wallet, folded, worn, and reread more times than I cared to admit. 10 years ago, Lena had been a quiet intern who barely spoke above a whisper. Now she ran her own firm. That alone was enough reason to reach out. But the truth was, I needed to see if the world still had space for people like me. People who didn't chase virality, but built legacies. We met at a downtown cafe that still served coffee in actual ceramic mugs. No hashtags on the walls, just the soft hum of espresso machines and a window booth that caught the late morning sun. She slid into the seat across from me, wearing a blazer over a vintage band tee. Confident, comfortable in a way I used to be. "You really reached out," she said, smiling. "You left me no choice," I replied, tapping the corner of her old note on the table. This little piece of paper got me through the last 72 hours. Lena laughed. "You always said words could do more than metrics." She didn't waste time. Within 10 minutes, we were dissecting what Virion had become. Short-form everything, zero retention thinking, an entire playbook built on momentary blips instead of meaningful arcs. She wasn't bitter like me. She was surgical. "Attention spans didn't shrink," she said, sipping her coffee. "People just got better at sniffing out BS." I leaned in. "So you think trust still scales?" "More than ever," she said. "But it has to come wrapped in the illusion of speed. The dopamine hit needs to introduce the depth. One without the other? You're either invisible or you're a flash in the pan." That was the moment it clicked. Not a full-blown epiphany, but a spark. The thing I'd been missing since I walked out of that corner office. This wasn't about fighting the new era. It was about fusing it with what used to work. Strategy without arrogance, agility without noise. 2 days later, I signed a lease for a desk in a second-floor co-working space that smelled like whiteboard markers and startup breath. I didn't need the corner office. I needed a launch pad. I called it Signal Core. There was no logo yet, no press release, just a laptop, a legal pad, and 3 calls on the first day. One to a copywriter I'd worked with before she got cut in a downsizing. One to a data analyst who'd been freelancing for scraps. And one to a designer who'd been criminally underused at Virion. "You in?" I asked each of them. They all said the same thing. "When do we start?" I didn't promise equity. I promised relevance, autonomy, a place where long-form thinking had a seat next to real-time responsiveness, where clients wouldn't be force-fed trends, but guided through transformation. We weren't just going to ride waves. We'd build lighthouses. Evenings bled into nights. I set up a live analytics board on a spare monitor and started pulling case studies of the brands that were quietly dominating instead of loudly fading. My days became a loop of cold brew, strategy mapping, and muted Zoom calls with people who used to hold corner offices and now worked from kitchen tables. Every person I brought in shared the same scar. They'd been cut for not being current enough. But what we had was deeper than trend fluency. We had endurance. And when I laid out the blueprint, they didn't just nod, they improved it. Lena dropped by one evening with a pizza and a folder, thick with notes. "You don't need to chase visibility," she said, setting it down. "You need velocity." She was right. We didn't launch with a bang. We slid in through side doors, quiet meetings, off-the-record referrals. Our first test project was a dying subscription platform hemorrhaging users. Within 6 weeks, we rebuilt their customer journey and reduced churn by 42%. No social campaign, no paid ads, just strategic positioning and honest value. We never asked clients to go viral. We asked them who they wanted to be when the noise died down. The work felt pure, unforced, and every success added weight to our silence. No one knew who Signal Corps was yet, but they would. On my desk sat the original note from Lena, framed now. Beneath it, I scrawled a reminder in Sharpie and taped it to the wall. Signal over noise, depth over hype. I wasn't chasing the future anymore. I was building one. And this time, I wasn't playing by their algorithm. I was writing my own. We were working out of a loft with exposed pipes and flickering lights when the email came in. Subject line: urgent, looking for solutions, not slogans. Attached was a brief from a global wellness brand called Tenzora, one of those juggernauts that used to dominate airport shelves and influencer feeds, now fading into irrelevance faster than their vegan protein bars expired. Their numbers were grim: 39% churn in Q2, stagnant subscription renewals, social engagement down 68%. They'd spent millions on flashy ads with zero retention lift. I read the deck twice, then once more in silence. This was it. Our moment. I told Lena and the team, no showmanship, just results. If we win this, we don't announce it, we leverage it. The war room was half a converted storage space, half digital battlefield. We wrote on windows, pinned funnels on foam boards, ran late-night test segments with ghost accounts. I personally dissected their onboarding sequence, rewrote every email in their drip campaigns, and overhauled the entire loyalty ecosystem. Instead of a flashy pitch deck, I showed up to the call with a screen share that walked their exec team through a customer journey simulation. 5 touchpoints, 0 jargon. They watched a fictional user go from first click to renewal decision over the span of 4 simulated weeks. We layered in adaptive storytelling, customized content based on user behavior, not generic psychographics. One of their directors, clearly exhausted, leaned into her mic. "So you're not promising reach?" "No," I said. "I'm promising retention. Reach is a myth if no one stays." They signed the next morning. We hit the ground running. Our strategies weren't about screaming louder. They were about listening better. We identified their core user archetypes, not based on age or gender, but on emotional intent. We then built feedback loops that rewarded engagement with meaningful value, personalized wellness check-ins, tiered loyalty perks, and monthly challenges that didn't feel like gamification. They felt like growth. By the end of the second month, Tenzora's churn dropped by 27%. By the third, it was under 15%. Social buzz began to flicker, not because we paid for it, but because users started screenshotting their dashboards and tagging the brand unprompted. It wasn't virality, it was resonance. Signal Corps stayed anonymous on the surface. Our contract forbade name drops. That was fine by me. I preferred the silence. It let us scale without pressure. But we became a whisper among VC analysts. I started getting vague pings from unknown numbers. "Heard about your firm from someone who said not to name you. Can you meet off-platform?" "You working with Riley's crew again?" "Ah, yes. Riley." I hadn't thought about her in weeks, not consciously. But when one of Virion's senior VPs emailed me late one night with the subject line, "Quick catch-up," it all came back. I opened the message. 3 sentences. No greeting. "Saw your name floating. Things are shifting here. Are you advising anyone in our space?" I didn't reply. Instead, I took a screenshot of 2 graphs, one showing Signal Corps' internal engagement index for our clients, the other showing Virion's public quarterly drop. I attached the image to a reply that simply said, "No need to catch up. The metrics speak." I never heard back, but the story didn't stop there. A junior reporter from an emerging business podcast called CruxPoints sent Lena a request. "We're doing a piece on silent scaling agencies reshaping client loyalty models. We keep hearing one name, Signal Corps. Any comment? I told her to decline. Let them speculate. But the reporter ran the piece anyway. Headline: Former exec behind new silent scaling agency crushing market. My face wasn't in it, but my fingerprints were all over every quote. And in one paragraph, buried near the end, was a reference to a once-dismissed strategist now setting the tone for the next wave of sustainable growth. That's all I needed. Suddenly, people who hadn't spoken to me in years were showing up in my inbox. Old colleagues, clients, even 2 board members from Virion, who'd once voted for Riley's appointment. One even asked, in the most backhanded tone imaginable, if I'd consider an advisory comeback now that the market's shifting. I forwarded the email to Lena with a single line. I think we're being noticed. She replied 2 seconds later. Notice is just the echo. We're the signal. Every move we made after that was sharper, more calculated. I doubled our core team. We brought in 2 machine learning consultants to refine our behavioral loop models. Not for hype, just for precision. I wasn't playing for revenge anymore. I was building proof. And every time our clients grew quieter, but more loyal, more profitable, more steady, I knew we'd hit the missing metric they all forgot to measure. Trust. Not clicks, not impressions, just trust. And once you have that, you don't need noise. You are the algorithm. It started with a message from an unlisted Proton Mail address. No subject line, just a PDF attachment and 5 words. Figured you'd want to see. Normally, I wouldn't open anonymous attachments. But something about the timing, the silence behind it. I clicked. The header read, Internal, Virion Board Minutes, Confidential. I read it once, then again, slower. Riley had pitched a pivot, not just any pivot, a strategy that mirrored Signal Core down to its spine. Retention first, story-led segmentation, behavioral loop feedback. She even used the phrase quiet growth velocity. The kicker? She name-dropped me in the 2nd paragraph. It's similar to what Marcus Leary has been doing at Signal Core. His team rebuilt Tenzora's subscriber base with 0 paid amplification. We should consider a hybrid strategy. The board's response. That's not our brand. We don't chase ghosts. We lead the feed. I laughed, an actual audible laugh in the middle of my office. Riley, trying to reverse engineer what she once called obsolete, her new world collapsing under old assumptions. And now, she was invoking my name like a spell to unlock credibility. It didn't work. The board shut her down. The memo ended with a passive-aggressive directive. Focus on creator partnerships. Algorithmic alignment is non-negotiable. I forwarded the file to Lena. Subject line, boardroom static. Her reply was immediate. Let's go loud. We'd kept quiet long enough. Signal Core wasn't a ghost anymore. It was a framework, and it worked. We drafted a case study, not flashy, just pure numbers. Tenzora, a boutique skincare chain, a non-profit media site, 3 different industries. Same result, lower churn, higher LTV, stronger loyalty. We didn't name names. We didn't throw punches. But the structure of the report made it clear who we were responding to. Especially when we ended with a single pull. Quote, your content isn't your brand. Your consistency is. Then, we opened our client roster, selectively. 5 new seats, no more. By Friday, over 60 applications landed in our inbox. VCs started pinging us with portfolio referrals. One called Lena and said, you've created a new category, Signal First Strategy. She just smiled and said, no, we remembered the old one. By Monday, the leak hit the press. Not the case study, the memo. Some whistleblower inside Virion forwarded it to Strat News, and they ran it with the headline, Virion's CEO tried to reverse course, but the board isn't listening. The story lit up LinkedIn. Comments exploded. Executives across industries started asking, "What is Signal Core, and why aren't we doing this?" Riley went silent, but Virion's metrics didn't. By Wednesday, 3 major advertisers paused campaigns, citing unclear direction. By Thursday, 2 senior partners resigned quietly. The stock dipped 11% in a single day. I didn't gloat. I didn't post. But I did watch. Friday morning, she went live. The company streamed an impromptu press conference. Riley looked polished, as always, but the cracks were there. Too much concealer under her eyes. Her voice slightly delayed between sentences, like her thoughts were buffering. She stepped up to the podium. Over the last few weeks, Virion has experienced some turbulence. Let me be clear. This is not about failure. It's about recalibration. Then came the line I'll never forget. "We underestimated retention storytelling." That was it. No apology. Just 5 words that echoed through a glass building she once swore didn't need foundations. I sat at my desk, leaned back, and watched in silence. Behind me, the team was finishing the onboarding sequence for our next client. Lena glanced over my shoulder at the live stream, smirked, and whispered, "You just watched her walk into your shadow." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. This wasn't revenge. This was design. We didn't force the market to shift. We just stood still long enough for it to realize it had been spinning in the wrong direction. Riley tried to build a company on momentum, but momentum fades. Substance anchors. That night, I walked past Virion's headquarters again. Same building, same lights. But this time, the name didn't matter. What echoed in those halls now was uncertainty, our uncertainty, the kind we created by doing things right. I didn't smile for long, but I smiled. Because in the end, the signal always cuts through the static. The ocean didn't roar here, it whispered. Out beyond the glass rail of the deck, the Pacific folded itself against the rocks with the rhythm of an old song. Inside, voices murmured over low-burning logs, laughter sparking like embers. No screens, no decks. Just founders, CMOs, and strategy veterans gathered around a fire with nothing to sell and no one to impress. We called it the Round Table, but it wasn't a company event. There were no lanyards or branded pens. Just a long weekend in a minimalist coastal house I'd rented for the occasion. Wood beams, concrete floors, and windows that made the sea feel like a third presence in every conversation. People asked why I put it together. "Because we've all been talking to algorithms," I told them. I figured it was time we talked to each other again. They came willingly. A brand strategist from Berlin, a direct-to-consumer founder from Austin, a burned-out CMO from a major app who just wanted to sit barefoot by a fire and remember why she started in the first place. We didn't pitch. We told war stories. Failures, mostly. The stuff that never makes it onto LinkedIn. One night, a startup CEO leaned back in his chair and looked at me. "You didn't just change the signal," he said. "You changed the station." I didn't say anything at first, just nodded and passed the wine bottle. Compliments feel heavier when they're earned. He wasn't talking about the work. He was talking about the silence, the refusal to chase, the decision to build slow, loud-proof foundations. By the third night, most of them were scribbling ideas into notebooks again. Not product roadmaps, perspective, how they wanted to lead, who they wanted to be. One of them whispered after a late walk on the beach, "This feels like strategy church." I liked that. After the last of them left, I stayed behind to close out the house, folded blankets, cleared bottles, watered a dying plant near the sliding door. No team, just me. I liked the silence now, didn't fear it anymore. Out on the porch, I poured a glass of single malt and lit a cigar I'd been saving since the Tanzora pitch. I let it burn slow between my fingers as the sun bled orange into the edge of the sky. I didn't think about growth, or KP is, or exits. I thought about that office, 15 floors up, where she slid that paper across the desk without looking at me. "You're operating in a world that doesn't exist anymore," she said. Funny. She was right. That world did disappear, but not because I left it, because it collapsed under its own echo. A small stack of mail had been couriered to the retreat house that morning. Most of it was irrelevant, logistics, receipts. But one envelope stood out. No return address. Thick paper. Tucked beneath the flap was a folded printout from Virion's investor relations site. Effective immediately, Riley Strand is stepping down from her role as CEO of Virion, Inc. She will transition to an advisory role and explore opportunities outside of corporate leadership. No quotes, no comment. Just a line that said it all. She didn't name me. Of course not. But the timing was perfect. Weeks after the case study. Days after her on-camera confession. I knew the board didn't ask her to step down because of me. They did it because of her decisions. But I also knew what they'd never admit. Her biggest mistake wasn't a failed campaign or a market misread. It was underestimating someone who still believed in foundations. I set the paper down and let the cigar burn a little longer. Smoke curled into the night air, mixing with salt and pine and silence. I didn't need a press quote. I didn't need to go back. There was nothing to prove. I'd already done it. I remembered every time I'd been told I was too slow, too loyal, too focused on old-school relationships. I remembered the meetings where I warned that attention wasn't loyalty, and loyalty wasn't luck. It was design. I remembered being talked over, smiled at, dismissed. And I remembered walking out of that office without saying a word, because words weren't the answer. Work was. Real work. Built in silence, powered by trust, designed to outlast whatever came next. I let the cigar go out in the ashtray. The wind was picking up, waves a little louder now, but still carrying the same rhythm, same song. Turns out, I didn't need to chase attention. I just had to let it find the signal.